this is Wandsworth Prison, which is an establishment I stayed in for a bit as a resident. There was a limit to how much you could do, and it was different hours to what I'm used to. I'm used to night times and a sex party where anything goes. This is like a daytime routine.
There's no conjugal visits in the UK. Was it hard or?
No, it's a bit like being a virgin again when you get out. Well, highs and lows of people who live in the fast lane are obviously more drastic because they're going to make big hits and they're going to be right up there. And then they're going to have a down sometimes. This is a bit like a game we used to play when we were kids called Snakes and Ladders. You sort of build it up, and then somebody brings it down or something brings you down a bit, and then you build it up again. And that's something which is kind of exciting if you're in that game. So I've had a lot of ups and downs in my life, but I never actually stopped trying to progress through life and move forward. That's what I'm doing, trying to get back up to the top again. My name's Edward, almost Sharrington Davenport. I was in the club promotion business when I was younger, and I've always enjoyed going to clubs and having tables at clubs. When I started to organise parties, I got in the gossip columns. I became known as Fast Eddie. Most people know me, they know I organise parties, they know I'm a sort of influential character in London, good at networking. I owned a number of pubs and clubs and stuff like that, and I think that was a great business, and that went really, really well.
Ladies and gentlemen! We are here for the London Club and Bar Awards! Ladies and gentlemen, he is gorgeous, he is talented, he is Mr. Eddie Davenport, ladies and gentlemen!
It's kind of a business I feel very at home with.
What's Eddie's reputation in the business scene?
He was the Richard Branson of the club world, definitely. Yeah, he took off to another level.
I started to do business with the government of Monaco and various international figures, and I became known as Lord Fast Eddie. I had a lot of accomplishments, but the Gatecrasher balls, which were parties I organised when I was a kid in the 80s, were iconic. They're still talked about today.
Illegal drinking, underage sex, all-night debauchery. This is the latest Gatecrashers balls. They're notorious for being wild child orgies of drinking, snogging, groping and vomiting.
We go for the Pacific Market. Our entrance fees are fairly expensive. We allow on quite lavish events.
What are your personal ambitions? You've done very well for someone of 21.
Yeah, I enjoy myself a lot and I like my business.
Want to be a millionaire?
That would be very nice.
The Gatecrasher balls were my first business, so that's why I've got very sort of fond memories of them. And people still come up to me in the street or when I'm out and about and say, oh God, I went to one of your parties. So people still have these great memories of them.
Okay, darlings, it's time to pump up the volume. Louder, Barty can't hear you! Nice to see you all.
I was part of the Chelsea crowd. That was my circle. It was always affluent. Children of wealthy, well-to-do people, children of judges, children of lords, and that's the kind of market we had.
Not wanting to sound like a snob, I think it's a good idea that people from the same class can all get together.
Do you think that if middle or lower class people were here, would you enjoy it?
No, I wouldn't enjoy it if they were here.
I like getting drunk, I like getting laid. Vodka, wine, you name it, I've been drunk here.
How old are you?
18.
18?
Yeah.
Sure?
My car's outside.
Yeah?
Yeah. Hello.
When I was younger, I was quite cutthroat. I was very determined and very enthusiastic. I think probably 99.9% of the people like me from that era. There are some people who came along and joined me in various parties and didn't really perform, or didn't want to work with after that, and some of these people might not like me from that. There was a gentleman I worked with called Jeremy Taylor, who was kind of a partner in London. He used to bring a particular crowd.
Me and Eddie are very different due to our different backgrounds. Whereas I've come from a big estate in Somerset. Eddie's been brought up in London all his life. You can't trust people in London as much as you can in the country.
So here's the main entrance to Cricket St Thomas Estate. 1,000 acres, 25 cottages. We did a deal with Noel Edmonds at one stage, and it was the home of Mr Blobby.
So is this Crinkley Bottom?
It is Crinkley Bottom as well, yeah. Yeah, we've just demolished Mr Blobby's house, which is just in that wood there. I went up to London Christmas 1986. Eddie saw me do a very successful event at the Hammersmith Palais. He thought, I'd like to work with this guy, which is why he approached me. So we started up a company and did the first Gatecrasher ball later on that year. You know, every day we would meet up and we would plan the events and work extremely closely together. This is Michael Heseltine's son, Rupert Heseltine. He'll be the future Lord Stanhope, owns huge parts of Stanhope Gardens. Josh Astor and the Astor family, they basically own New York. There were various sort of title people and MPs, sons and daughters, but they were just people that came to the parties. It was 1988, the Gatecrasher balls had been going for a few years. They had had their sort of natural peak, and we were starting to see a bit of a decline in numbers. And Eddie's very astute. I went away on holiday for a week, I got back, bank accounts cleared out, the locks on the office have all been changed. It was about £40,000 that had been taken from our joint bank account. And my bank manager also rang up and said, look, do you want this £15,000 moved over to the joint bank account? Which I said, oh, well, why? I said, oh, well, you called up earlier in the week, which I hadn't at all. So I don't know who had made that call, but I have my suspicions. I did feel very hurt when Eddie did what he did, because he's never apologised. To him, it's just a certain stage in life, certain things happened, and he just tried to get away with as much as he could.
His main criticism was that I was a bit ruthless. I didn't really have any sort of compassion or something like that, saying, okay, well, oh dear, poor you, you just got his nose pulled out of joint, because he felt that I didn't do it with discussion or something like that, but I was much younger.
When I'm older, I definitely want to have a nice house in London, a house in the country, probably a house in France or a house abroad. Lots of nice paintings, antiques. I'm sure there'll be lots of things I want.
Okay, we're walking through 33 Portland Place at the moment, and it's been used for a film shoot today. Apparently Rory Bremner is dressed up as David Cameron. He's about to walk in.
Yes, by all means.
We'll do it here instead.
Yeah, fine. A little bit of that, a little bit of a selfie.
We'll do a selfie, like a selfie.
Like a selfie.
I was just under 30 the first time I came to this house. I lived here for 18 years. It's one of the biggest mansions in the West End of London. It's absolutely vast. I mean, in total, I think it's got 110 rooms in the property. And it's always been associated with big events and grandeur. This is the former billiard room, and it's probably most famous for being in the King's Speech. We've done a lot of sort of film premiere parties here. We've done sort of fashion launches here, mostly celebrity parties. Very, very private, very, very exclusive.
So, I live here with Eddie, and the house is never empty. There's always someone coming in, someone coming out. Yo!
There's a very good friend of mine, Chris. He holds sort of decadent sex parties or swingers parties at my place. Chris is a very good-looking guy. He's got beautiful girlfriends, and he seems to know all these very, very naughty girls who are very, very up for going to a very, very naughty party. And it's been bloody good fun having them.
I mean, it's quite an achievement to get like 600 naughty people that want to have lots of sex to your house. It's good fun. Well, first of all, it's a matter of like setting up, so like loads of condoms around and lubes and wipes and all that sort of stuff, and music, and getting the hot tub ready, and setting up the beds, setting up the sheets, setting up loads of stuff really. Eddie and I have a very interesting relationship where he's notorious for living in the Playboy house and being the Playboy of England, I guess. And I've come along as this kind of young guy that had this idea in my head about doing these elite parties, and it was a relationship that worked well for both of us. He got a situation where there was constantly hot women coming in through the door, and I got a situation where I was able to, have 30 million house to live in, which changed my life around, really. I've been warned a lot about Eddie. So do I just say to him, I'm sorry, I can't be your friend because someone else said something? I can just say he's been really good to me, and you know, he calls me his best friend.
Can you tell us how you came to acquire Portland Place?
I had a phone call one evening when I was sitting in my office in Monaco from the government of Sierra Leone. They were like, well, we want to get a loan. And this is like in the 1990s. I kind of knew there was a war in Sierra Leone at the time, so I knew they'd be in difficulties. So anyway, I rocked up to the embassy and this, wow, amazing building, striking building. And over a long period of time, I lent them some money or done some deals with them. And then eventually I bought, I think, a part of the property first. And then eventually, when they wanted more money, they offered the whole property to me.
As to how the building got into Davenport's hands, from my understanding, is that somebody brought together our then High Commissioner, Cyril Faure, and Edward Davenport. Somehow they got to talking about the fact that this building needed to be refurbished. Our government just did not have the money, and because of that, they were very, very vulnerable. Davenport must have spotted this straight away, and he just pounced. For this to happen, a lease would have to be signed over to him. They would have to vacate the premises for a certain period of time. Davenport moved in and stayed put. Davenport has this talent for preying on vulnerabilities. He offers what appears to be a helping hand, and then before they know it, probably lost their hand.
They tried suing me and we had this court case which dragged out for a little bit. The long and short of it was I kept the building and that they got a little bit of money.
I think it was either 55,000 or 75,000 pounds. Plus, he was very happy to point to a second-hand Mercedes-Benz that was thrown in as part of the deal. You consider that even in its dilapidated state, the building was worth between 2 or 3 million then. And to get either 55 or 75,000 pounds is an absolute travesty, and it's a disgrace. It's a disgrace, honestly. Even as I speak to it all these years later, and I'm not being melodramatic, it is very, very painful for me. It is very painful for me because it's something that is lost that we will never get back again. We started hearing stories about what happened to the building and what it became, and it kind of, for us, it tarnished the memory of what that building had been to us.
We've been in this building now for over 18 years. It's part of its history. What I've done here has obviously been different to what the previous people did here, and it is going to be different to what the next person's going to do here. So the building's legacy of this particular 2 decades is parties, decadence, beautiful girls, celebrities, and fun.
We get a lot of gangsters, we get a lot of fraudsters, we get a lot of the porno industry, swinging industry, we get a lot of royalty actors. Eddie's is a very sensitive gentleman, and a lot of the websites and that publish him as a bit of a fraudster, a bit of a money grabber. It's a bit of a mirror image thing, I suppose, because it is and it isn't him. You got to know him for a long time, and you got to know what makes him tick. And obviously money does make him tick.
This house, it's so perfect for the parties. It just brings out the sort of debauchery in everyone, I think.
It does. You can't not be awe-inspired by, you know, the surroundings. It brings you into a different world because you're in this place of luxury. We do hook up, yeah.
She's amazing.
Well,
She's
thank
amazing.
you.
A lot of people here are very fucking professional. However, they come in here and they do the most crude, vile stuff. I know several people in here running big corporations, telling you some fucked up shit, law-breaking stuff, which is quite normal amongst the elite. It's normal. The higher up the people here, the more twisted they are.
My name's Michael Thorne, and I've known Edward Davenport since we were 13 years old. I have never met a man so focused on making money. It's quite an extraordinary personality trait that he has. He has this astonishing ability to see how he can stay within the law, but only just. He can sail right up to the edge of being illegal, of it being criminal activity. And he seems to have this intuitive understanding of how to just stay this side of being legal. It's quite extraordinary. He's lived an amazing life, surrounded by beautiful women and beautiful cars and more wealth than most human beings can ever dream of. Unfortunately, it was just never enough for him.
You've been partying all night?
Yeah. Well, for 61 years old.
Take care of yourself.
I don't mind being known as sharp when it comes to business, because at the end of the day, you know, you have to strike a hard deal and a hard bargain. Otherwise, in this life, you're going to get walked all over. In business, I'm very careful. I get legal advice first, I get accountant's advice. I might play it close to the wire, but I make sure it's within the law.
How close to the wire? How do you mean?
Close to the wire means that in business, sometimes you take a risk. You wouldn't break the law, but you take risks.
It was from this enviable address in central London that Davenport conned his clients. He promised to loan businesses hundreds of millions of pounds and charged a substantial security fee. But the loans were never paid out, and he pocketed £4 million worth of fees.
A number of instances of suspected fraud were reported to the Serious Fraud Office. The name Davenport arrived on my desk quite early in the investigation, within the first few days. The fraud started off with Davenport obtaining ownership of businesses that had been dormant for some time, and then he would change the name. In this case, it was to Gresham Limited. So we would naturally think it's a successful company. They've been running 20 years without any problems. They were stating to the victims that they could provide loans for their businesses, but in fact there was no money there, and they were only obtaining advance fees from the victims on the pretext that the loan would be provided. Gresham was just a hollow shell. It was a fraud. Straightforward. Simply a fraud.
For me, it all falls down from Davenport, Portland Place. He'd got the persona, Lord Davenport, whatever they wants to call himself. He'd got the building, he'd got the trappings, he'd got the profile, but they probably looked at how quickly things were turned around, as in they asked for £6,500. If it arrives in minutes, they probably think, well, this guy's, you know, pretty flush. And then what they do later on, they slow it down and they see how desperate you are. They get you on the treadmill, they speed it up, and you're running along, and you think, fantastic, this is going great. Then they slam the brakes on and you think, well, what's happened here? Then you start getting desperate and stepping forward, and then it starts costing you money, and you're paying this, you're paying that. They just draw you in, stop you right where you are, and you can't move. And then they play a card, insurance guarantee. Desperation, you go, no problem, boom, there's your money, let's go. And they vanish. Why didn't I see it? And the reason why I didn't see it, because they were good, they were brilliant, they were professional fraudsters.
Edward Davenport to speak to him, is quite a pleasant person. At court, for example, every morning he'd say, "Good morning, Mr. Bolt," to me. Just have a little chat. But that's part of his personality. He's very friendly. People warm to that. They get drawn in.
I ended up in a courtroom which had a judge
which had a very, very basic knowledge, to say the least, of business. He was never been a businessman, he'd never done business, he'd never set up a company in his life. And it really messed up the whole trial. The judge seemed to be of the opinion that I was somehow a ringmaster and somehow in control of all these people. It's absolute nonsense. And then he says, oh, you don't leave many footprints in the snow. So basically, there was no evidence against me.
As a result of this case, Edward Davenport received almost 8 years in prison.
What was his reaction when he kind of was given his sentence?
Again, I can't comment about that,
Okay.
apart from he did stop calling me Mr. Bolt.
I don't think we'll have a good time in prison, but obviously I've got to face that reality that I'm going to be living in that premises for a long time. So I've just got to make the most of it, which means, try and get a room that's the nicest looking room I can get in the place, try and, get a comfy bed, try and get whatever I might need to make sure that I have the best time I can have in the circumstances. Certainly I did meet some very interesting people there. It was a celebrity hangout, really, Wandsworth, when I was there, because they kept sending rich celebrities to prison for one reason or another. I met Chris Hume, who was a politician. I met Addy Bowley, who was the Credit Suisse road trader, who I was obviously hanging out with, because, I guess people still socially stick together. So, the group of people who are well known tend to kind of congregate in one area and have a coffee, and the other people who are into another type of game, like drug dealing, might hang out in another corner.
The idea that somebody's a criminal because they've been involved in a white-collar crime is just absolute nonsense. It is not correct. White-collar crime, it happened. It's a bureaucratic nightmare out there. You've got due diligence, you've got this, you've got all these things you have to do. People get it wrong, people make a mistake, people get greedy. It's not anything like being a criminal. Probably, in my opinion, it shouldn't even be penalised in the same way. The reason prisons were set up is to restrain people who were a danger to the public, who had a fight in the street, who robbed old ladies, who raped, who had, some kind of sexual offence. Not people who do a financial offence.
Did you feel like it was fair having to pay that money back?
Yeah, obviously it's very disappointing paying out money for something which you didn't receive. So, I didn't receive the money myself in the first place. So to pay out money, it's totally pointless for me. But it was one of those things I was requested to do by a court, so I did it.
We're moving down to Mayfair tomorrow. Gonna just pack some stuff, probably go to a little party tonight, and then just move out, I guess. I think I understand Eddie pretty well. But friends in the past just kind of cut out, as he really been their friend, and it could come across as he's just using me for the parties that I can bring to the table. I talk about Eddie in a kind of plural sense, as in Eddie 1 and Eddie 2. There's one side which is like the nicest guy in the world, and then there's like another side which is almost psychopath. I asked him once, "Do you ever get emotional?" And he's like, "No, like literally never." And he said actually there was one time when he had his kidney transplant and he was on his own in the hospital, and then he got quite emotional then.
When Edward was in Wandsworth, he had very serious problems with his kidney, and he had a kidney transplant, and I arranged for him to appeal his sentence on human rights grounds that he should be given early compassionate release. We made an immediate appeal to the Court of Appeal, and we got new medical evidence for him. And the Court of Appeal took 1 year off his sentence, which meant almost effective immediate release.
Do you think that your early release was justified?
Well, I think I probably knew that there was some kind of breach of my human rights there, or felt there was, because it's a bit absurd to be in handcuffs while you're seriously ill and having a kidney transplant. But it resulted in me getting a very substantial amount off my sentence. So that was the upside of having to have a very unusual operation in very unusual circumstances.
I think that would give anyone a sense of their own mortality, and that time is limited, and maybe his sense of mortality urges him on to make an impression on the world, and his choice to make an impression on the world is to make as much money as he can, by fair means or foul.
When you think about what happened to the victims, there were kind of varying degrees of how much it affected them personally, but it ranged from a negligible amount of money for some people to people kind of going bankrupt.
No, I mean, you have to take it with a total pinch of salt when you hear these sort of terrible stories. I mean, there was no one who was a client of Gresham's who wasn't a very experienced business person with a lot of money, because the loans that Gresham were offering were £10 million plus. So it's just a sort of nonsense to think, oh, well, there's some innocent, vulnerable person out there who applied for a £10 million loan. It's just not going to be the case. I don't think there were any personal victims that I had met or knew of. So they were all companies and corporates and things like that.
I lost my home, my car was repossessed, company was liquidated. It destroyed me mentally, just completely destroyed. They gave him the new kidney and he's out of prison and he's walking around, swanning around, showing himself off. Wrong. Because I'm sitting here 7 years, 8 years later, still suffering because of what him and his boys did to me. It's not the financial side of it, it's what they do to you in here. They take you to places that you don't know, and they leave you there, and they leave you totally exposed. I felt like I've been raped.
This used to be a very, very quiet place, but since Edward moved in, it's just a flood of people that comes in. If you come over here, you've got to be coming with a woman next to you.
This is the Playboy shoot happening in the Penthouse. The Playboy shoot is been themed around one of my parties. So each room and each different scene has got different positions and different people doing different things. Well, I've actually known the director of the Playboy shoot today for about 8 years, and I have actually promised him for every single shoot he's done that I'm going to perform. So I'm definitely introducing a scene. And he's really trying to tempt me today because he's got the most beautiful girls I've ever seen in my life. I'm Lord Edward Davenport. I'm a member of the British aristocracy. I've always lived a flamboyant life, and over the years I've become extremely well known for holding the best parties in London.
If you can mention the fact that your parties are more exclusive.
Okay. Only beautiful people come. Only beautiful people are allowed in. Money's no object to these people.
Fantastic, that's great. I like that.
Eddie,
Yes.
do you believe in God?
I'm a Buddhist, actually. It's just an interesting way of life. The teachings are more interesting, more realistic, more logical than the other religions that I read about or studied or got invited to. You're supposed to live as simply as possible, but I don't think they actually object to somebody making money in Buddhism. I think that's like a misconception of the Buddhist belief. But you have to live your life in a good way. You have to create good karma, you have to create good vibes, you have to have a good feeling. As a Buddhist, I don't think you're supposed to sit there and think every day, oh, let's go out and do good deeds. It's supposed to be some way of life that you follow. So you're supposed to just create good karma. It means you're supposed to always behave respectfully, always behave well, always treat people kindly.
And do you follow that?
So I'm a Buddhist, so that's my beliefs.
When you look at yourself in the mirror, do you think I'm a good person?
As a Buddhist, I don't think you're supposed to
just as a
think.
person.
No, I'm replying in the Buddhist perspective now, though. Everyone gets distracted now and again, everyone gets sidetracked now and again. But in Buddhism, your karma can be corrected. Even a bad person can become a good person. So it's not a finality. As a Buddhist, you're not really supposed to have regrets. And as a person, I don't really have regrets. I just try and do as best I can. I try and enjoy myself and try and make the most of my life.